On this edition of Independent Sources, a special look at President-elect Donald Trump and his vibrant support in ethnic communities, despite his xenophobic comments.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Garry Pierre-Pierre.
President-elect Donald Trump's recent victory has sparked a mainstream narrative about a country divided along racial and ethnic fissures. But that may be an oversimplification of what is actually happening in many ethnic and immigrant communities around the country. The assumption is that these people are monolithic in their political and social beliefs. The truth is that nearly 30% of Hispanics voted for Donald Trump. And there are many in the Indian community who've thrown their wholehearted support behind the president-elect. That's despite his many xenophobic comments and promise to enforce even stricter immigration policies. With me in studio to discuss Mr. Trump's outspoken support amongst immigrant communities are Jehangir Khattak, the co-director at the Center for Community and Ethnic Media, and the editor-in-chief and publisher of Queens Latino newspaper, Javier Castaño. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, here we are, President-elect Trump. So Javier, in the Latino community, explain to us as much as you can, since you're the editor and publisher of Queens Latino, why did he poll 30% of the vote despite his many proclamations about Latinos specifically and immigrants in general?
When we send the photographers and reporters to interview in our community to find out what is going on before the election, we find out that people don't like Hillary Clinton that much. People say, we cannot trust her, and they were using words like she's very sneaky, so she's going on her way. And that really get our attention. And at the same time, we find out that people really understood what was going on. So she was talking about her background on immigration, and he was going to change the immigration system. But she has a terrible background, even on immigration. So the Democratic Party took the Latino vote for granted, and that was a mistake, I guess.
Okay. And Jehangir, among South Asians, was the sentiment the same?
I think in South Asian community, generally it was presumed that a majority of them support Hillary Clinton. And I think it was so. But many people, I think, misunderstood the kind of support that Trump had within the communities. We saw in the Indian community, for example,
they were cheering, right? They were cheering.
Days before the election, they organized a big event in New Jersey for Donald Trump, where more than 7,000 people showed up.
Really?
And yes, and it was big event. And after that, even Trump, I think, came up with a campaign ad, and he said a word in Hindi as well. So he knew that there is a support within the Indian community. Then if you come to Pakistani community, within the Pakistani community as well, I think there was support for him, even though it was not very high. Generally, majority of the people were with the Secretary Clinton, but Donald Trump did have support, and there were many supporters who never declared that they are supporting Trump.
So they were silent supporters.
There was a silent support for him. People did vote for him, and there were very few even who confessed. Like a day before the election, I met a German from the Pakistani community who is an activist, and he supported Clinton throughout. And just 2 days before, like 1 day before the polling, he told me that he's going to vote for Trump. And I asked him why. He said, well, I can live with lies because he may correct himself, but I cannot live with hypocrisy because he thought that she's a hypocrite. So that trust deficit, I think, was there, and it was always there. But many people, because of Mr. Trump's very tough stance, especially about Muslims, so many Muslims thought that Hillary is their best bet. Okay. But within the community, there was still support for him.
Okay. Well, Javier, your newspaper endorsed Clinton for president. Here it is right there. Presidenta, nuestro apoyo a Hillary Clinton. We bring our support to Hillary Clinton. Why did you support her despite the fact that your own polling showed that she was not very popular?
We have the opportunity to back two people, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, for many reasons, because Donald Trump was attacking the Latino community, the immigrant community, and the minority community, so we are not going to support him. But that was the reason. And that paper, we distributed the publication all over Queens. Our surprise was that some people or some kind of organization took our paper out of our boxes and threw it away. So we have to fill again the boxes on the street. That was very interesting. And I guess people vote for Trump in the Latino community that we talked to for two reasons. Because he portrayed himself like a businessman, so he's going to revitalize the economy. And the other thing is that he's going to create jobs. So they just look at that and say, oh, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because of two reasons.
Did they ask themselves sort of like how? Because he never told us how he was going to do that. Do people understand his plans and how he's going to implement any of this stuff?
I don't think so. No, the Democratic Party didn't explain neither. They just talk. They are politicians, and people believe in that. They have reasons to believe because they are afraid the country is going down, so he's going to revitalize the economy and give us jobs because they are afraid. So yeah, but they don't look for an explanation, I guess.
Okay. And so, what is the sentiment there, Garry? I mean, in your capacity at the center, you scan almost every ethnic publications in the city, and you have a sense of what's going on in other communities. So give us a synopsis of how the other communities are reacting to this.
Before the elections, if you look at the ethnic and community media, I think majority, like if you look at the Polish community, so there was a slight majority that was supporting Trump. In the Irish community, majority were supporting Clinton, but Trump had a significant support. According to one survey within the community, there were about 40% Irish voters who were supporting Mr. Trump. In the Indian community, their own projections were that about 70% support Hillary Clinton.
Oh, you mean Trump or Clinton?
No, 70% support for Clinton.
Okay.
And there was a significant support for Trump. Okay. Some said it was 18%, but it was much higher than that, which we saw in the polls as well. Just in the city of Edison, where there is a large South Asian population.
In New Jersey, yeah.
And if you look at that, in New Jersey, if you look at their numbers, so more than or close to 40% people supported, voted for Trump. So this shows where there was a large South Asian population. It has, I think, majority is Indian, but there are quite a few Pakistanis and some Bangladeshis as well. So if you combine those numbers, it gives you a better sense that where did the vote come from. So about close to 40% in Edison, where is a large, and we will see more numbers down the road, and we will see that he did have support, but it was silent. Similarly, if you look at the other communities like Latino community, just like Javier explained, in the Bangladeshi community, majority supported Hillary Clinton, but Trump always had a support, and people never declared it.
So let's talk about it a bit with the Pakistani Indian, the Hindu-Muslim divide. Pakistanis are largely Muslim. Where did it come down on this race? I know there are some Pakistanis who supported him, but did the fear of not letting Muslim in sway them one way or the other?
It did. I think it played a very important role because of his statements. Many people were really worried, and they are still worried, that how he will treat the Muslim population, and why are there enough reasons for the Muslim community to even trust him, even when he takes oath, what kind of policies he will bring in. And within the Pakistani community, there were some interesting trends. The division was to some extent on the religious grounds as well. Yeah. If you look at the Indian community, majority of the support for Trump was coming from the Hindu community.
The Sikh, for instance,
Sikh and Muslims and Christians and other communities, they were supporting Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And similarly, in the Pakistani community, while there was a block of voters which was supporting Mr. Trump, and they were not declaring it, majority of them were not declaring it, but Pakistani Christian population, for example, in the US, they were supporting Mr. Trump. These divisions are very much similarly in the Bangladeshi community, where their overall, if you look at their population, so the significant number is Hindu as well. And according to the Bangladeshi media and journalists, like there was all the support for Trump was coming from the non-Muslim voters. So those divisions were there. And I think those statements and his promise to ban the immigration from the Muslim countries especially, or entering Muslims, so those statements I think contributed a lot, and it really scared many people, and they are really very apprehensive even right now.
Thank you. We're due for our first break. Stay tuned, there's more to come. Thanks for staying tuned to a special look at President-elect Trump and his appeal in ethnic and immigrant communities. Javier, Jahangir just gave us a brilliant breakdown in the Pakistani Indian communities. In this country, we've been hearing a lot about the power of the Latino vote forever. And we thought perhaps this year was when we were going to see that power unleash itself. The opposite happened. Let's talk about the differences in the Latino communities and how we are where we are now.
Let's consider first that Donald Trump was elected not because of the minority vote or the Latino vote. It helps, but basically for the white vote. Mm-hmm. And the Latino issues were never on top of the table to discuss. In other words, we don't know what Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump thought about the situation in Mexico, that the drug trafficking is killing people, or what's going on, or what are they going to do with Puerto Rico, that is in an economic turmoil, or what's going on with Mexico, with Venezuela, that the population can swim on petroleum but can't find milk, or the Colombia that can get rid of that civil war for more than 50 years. So those issues weren't there. So we need to bring those to the table, and at the same time, we lack leadership. And your question, we are divided in many ways because sometimes you hear that Colombians don't get well with others, or vice versa, and we need to get rid of that because that is destroying our community. We need to unify. We need to find out the real issue that affecting our community, the other issue that affect everyone, like housing and education. But we need to have that discussion, and we need to integrate the community, and yeah, that's the job that we need to be done.
Okay. So Jahangir, did the Republican Party not do enough to attract the minority immigrant vote?
I think Republican Party did try, but not much. Some of the efforts for Republican candidate was even done voluntarily in the beginning. Later on, they of course adopted. For example, in the Pakistani community, there's a Pakistani German who is based in Baltimore, and he's like a businessman, non-businessman, and he was the one who started Muslims for Trump, and he started this campaign. And he started enlisting, and he started and more people started joining it. And then his business partner, who is a Sikh from India, he started Sikhs for Trump. Mm-hmm. And both of them supported him, and they launched that campaign. And later on, the Republican Party did embrace them because Sajid Tarar was one of the, I think, 36 key people appointed by Trump campaign for reaching out to different communities, and Sajid Tarar was one of them. So they later on did try that, but I think not to the level where we saw, where they were expecting. And I don't think so that the Democratic Party also did not do that much, because they took their Muslim vote or the Pakistani or all South Asian vote for granted. Mm-hmm. And they thought that there are a lot of similarities, they are at the same wavelength, they're thinking at the same wavelength. And I think there is one more thing. These, the voters here were influenced by the mood within their own countries as well.
Okay, interesting point. So now, Javier, do you think the Republican or both political parties will make an effort to court the ethnic vote, seizing an opportunity from the Republican, a chance to get more from the Democrat to gain what they lost?
I think we are facing a very interesting time for the Latino community in this country, because if the Democratic Party took us for granted, now they are basically trying to fix the party, and then the Republican Party put us aside, and they realized that some people from the Latino community vote for us. So we, as a Latino, we need to get together, have an agenda, identify some leaders, and just go ahead, because this is what was missing before. That we trust the Democratic Party, and we didn't trust the Republican Party. But that's not true. We need to create our own agenda. We need to create our own leaders. We need a leader who really call the Latino community to follow some ideas. But we don't have that leader. We don't have our Al Charlton, let's say it. If something happened to a Latino in the city of New York,
So you want a Al Sharpton Latino version?
yeah, it's something like that. This is something that is going on in the Latino community for years. Where is this person? We don't have it. Because as you asked me before, the division between many ethnic group countries in the Latino community, we need to put that aside. That's not a problem. We have our own language, our own culture. We understand each other. So let's work as a group. In Queens Latino, I do not identify our readers or our visitors on the website as Colombians or Puerto Ricans or Mexicans. We just say Latinos because that's the way it is.
Well, is this a time for soul searching for the Latino community, as we called it? Because so much was expected. I mean, you're absolutely correct. Latinos didn't cost Clinton the election, but all the experts, even us, we were expecting all the minority immigrant votes to go overwhelmingly for Trump, and it didn't. So where do we stand today?
Yeah, remember that Latinos vote more in this election than in 2012. 2012 was 11.2 and now it's 13.1.
I mean,
so increase, right? But that increase is not backing the Democratic Party all over the way they won. We can find even similarities between what happened here 2 years ago when everybody thought, oh, Christy Quinn was supposed to be the mayor of the city of New York. And then Bill de Blasio, who came against the establishment, won the election. That happened here also last Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. I meant to say that we expected the immigrants to vote overwhelmingly against Trump, but they did give him significant support. So Jahangir, what next? I mean, overall, who emerged as a force in the immigrant community politically?
I think this election, I mean, now we know the results, of course, but this election did have one impact, which is pretty big. At least I saw it in a few communities. Smaller communities, I think, had a bigger involvement in the process.
Such as?
Such as the Muslim community declared for the first time that they registered more than 1 million voters.
Was that true or was just a number?
These numbers, of course, I don't know if they are authentic or not, but an organization, they announced days before the polling that they have registered 1 million voters across the nation. We saw within different communities, like Bangladeshi community was very active. The Pakistani community organizations were very active. They were mobilizing voters. Many mosques and different other places of worship within the communities, they organized special voter registration campaigns. So I think given the stakes, because every community thought that they have big stakes in this election, particularly this election. So that's why I think they were more mobilized, and I think their involvement was much stronger than before. So they were very much involved, and they were mobilized. They voted, and they actively participated. Even though they might not have elected too many people, except for example, Indian community, they have sent 4 people to the Congress for the first time. So that is because of that activism that we have seen in this election.
All right, thank you. Stay tuned. When we come back, a few final thoughts from our guests. Welcome back. So, gentlemen, we were discussing the Clinton's loss. In some ways, were unexpected vote against her in the ethnic communities. Now, as we know, she was Secretary of State. And a lot of the U.S. policies that she implemented, executed, were controversial. How much do you think that had something to do with feelings of immigrant communities here about her election, her campaign rather?
Under her tenure there, this country deported around 3 million people.
Deported?
Deported around 3 million people, yes.
Okay.
And on 60 Minutes, President-elect Donald Trump said, I'm going to deport probably from 2 to 3 million. That's less than the Obama administration. So things are not going to change that drastically that we thought. And she, as Secretary of State, basically also avoid the issues that affect Latinos, that like the relationship with Cuba or the free treatment agreements. So we need to bring those to the table.
Okay. Well, you know, interestingly enough, for me, in Haiti, she played a very destructive role in Haiti. In 2011, there were elections, and Michel Martelly, who eventually became president, was not the top choice. He became president under a deal brokered by Secretary Clinton, and that really offended Haitians in Haiti and many, many Haitian Americans. So her vote, although I believe she received many Haitian American votes, but there were many people who voted against her, to my surprise. And then when you look at Pakistan, where with the drone attacks, how much did that policy really affected her support here among Pakistanis?
I think one thing in Pakistan, traditionally, the Pakistani people in Pakistan, Pakistani public has traditionally supported the Republicans. They have always felt very comfortable with Republicans. But for the first time, they were supporting Hillary Clinton. There was a lot of huge support for Secretary Clinton in Pakistan.
Now, before you go on, because you said something that really caught my attention. You said that Pakistanis have always supported Republicans. Why?
Because for some reason they think that Republicans have treated them well, whether it was during the Reagan era, when the Afghan war it started and it was at its peak as well. So Pakistanis worked very closely with the Republican administrations, and they did very well. And then when Bill Clinton came into power after Bush Senior, he was tilted more towards India. So again, the Pakistanis thought that, we worked so closely with the Republicans for years, and now there is a Democratic president and he is ignoring us. He went to India, he visited, Bill Clinton was the one who opened up to India basically. And after that, there was a lot of pressure on the president at that time that he should go to Pakistan, and he did visit Pakistan for 6 hours. So there is always an apprehension within the Pakistani public that the Republican administration has traditionally done well for them. But this time around, because of the president-elect at that time, candidate Trump, his statements had really sent alarm bells all over, especially among the Pakistanis, because first he said that he will ban Muslims, then he said that they will ban people from countries which are hit by some sort of conflict or violence. So those increased the fears, and that also contributed, I think, to overall, voting patterns.
Javier, same thing in Latin America. Okay, have Latinos traditionally been supportive of the Republican Party than the Democratic Party?
You can have, you can find examples anywhere. Let's say that in Argentina, they just changed the government, and the new government is probably really happy with the election of Donald Trump, right? But it's not the same case in Venezuela with a government that is more to the left, right? So you have to consider all these elements, and I guess we are still waiting to see what Donald Trump is going to do as president. He said, okay, I'm going against the Obamacare, I'm going to deport a lot of people, but let's see how and how fast he can do it.
But again, going back, I know Latin America is large, but I know in the Caribbean, for instance, a lot of Caribbean nations feel more comfortable with Republican administrations than Democratic ones. And I wanted to know if it's similar in Latin America.
No, I don't think that's the case in Latin America in general. I think Latin America is more interested in a Democratic party, and they feel attached to people like probably Clinton more than Reagan, things like that. Yes.
Okay. So,
I just wanted to add one thing. While I told you, the general perception in Pakistan, here in the US as well, if you look at the political involvement of Pakistanis and Indians, I'll give you the first Pakistani ever elected to a US legislature. He was elected from New Hampshire. He was elected to New Hampshire State Assembly in 2000, and he was elected on a Republican ticket. The first Pakistani ever elected to a Houston City Council seat, he was elected on a Republican ticket. The first Indian American governor who ever elected in the US was in Louisiana, Bobby Jindal. Then the first women, Indian American women ever elected as a governor, again Nikki Haley, who is a former Sikh, and she was elected a governor of South Carolina. So if you look at that history as well, so we have seen that there are quite a few instances where the Republicans have embraced some of these different communities.
And what are Democrats doing about that? Are they just going to let this happen, or are they going to fight for what could be, what they thought have been their allies all along?
I think they will have to review their strategy. I think if you look at the Democratic National Committee, when you look at their conventions, you will see quite a few delegates from the South Asian nations now. But I think it has to go beyond that. There are people who were elected on the Democratic ticket even during this election, but I think the outreach has to be further. They should not take the South Asian vote for granted. They have to go beyond that, and they have to address the concerns that these communities may have, and they definitely have. And that's why it might have contributed the mood in the country back home. If you look at their media is also hugely influenced by their country of origin. It is so in most of the community and ethnic media, and especially those, I think, who are relatively new immigrants. In that media, you will see that much of the content is coming from their country of origin. And given the language barrier that many of the communities have, so this media has huge influence as well. So if there is a support for one candidate in their country of origin, it is being reflected here in the media, and it is impacting the people here as well.
Thank you. That's our show this week. Thanks to my guest, Jahangir Khattak, the co-director at the Center for Community and Ethnic Media, and the editor-in-chief and publisher of Queens Latino newspaper, Javier Castaño. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Till next time, be independent-minded.